Can do some business. The recording is in progress. We can do.
Yeah, I mean, it's open to everybody.
I think I'm getting ready to join it.
We're getting ready to join here. With no,
Join the video.
no video.
Oh, you can join with video if you want, I don't care, but no camera, no mic and no speaker.
Next is really
We'll
cool.
get feedback.
Yeah.
Just model one.
Well, the big rule is that.
That doesn't look like fun.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But it is a house.
Yeah, and usually they.
Why don't you tell them no more thank you?
And this can be an issue.
One person.
Okay, here's a ground rule thing for folks inside. Folks, if I can get your attention, Eddie, guys, if I can get your attention, if you're inside the space here, the owl's smart, but not smart enough to catch everyone talking at the same time. It gets kind of confused because it's going to zap to who's ever talking. So if you can, keep talking one at a time, one person at a time. And the same thing, if you're on Zoom, can you hear me, guys? Yep. All right. If you're on Zoom too, that kind of happens as well. We'll keep an eye on the chat. If you have something, we have a great program for us tonight. And I think we are
there.
we are squared away. Hey, welcome to tonight. It worked. Look at that. Woo. Any new members in the group? We are either on Zoom or in the room. Do you have any new members?
No, no, oh.
How about on Zoom? Nope. Oh, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Jaime Gonzalez, if you didn't know. So there you go. That's new members. I'm not on my phone, but I am on my phone looking at my notes.
And
So, you know, we communicate in many different ways. It looks like everybody got the email or the Facebook. So we're going to email, communicate in a lot of different ways, either by social media, on Facebook, by email, by Instagram. So all that kind of way, we're going to get the message out to you guys. If you're not familiar, I already talked to beers and that. So a quick run through of the schedule for March is what we're gonna do next. If there's any folks here that run the focus groups, if there's something in particular you want to say about your focus group, when I bring it up, we'll do that. Ralph is sharing. This is the Bloomington Photography Club website where you can grab a lot of information. So you can go there and find your information. So today is the 7th. We're having a hybrid meeting, and we have a guest speaker here, Rich. Yep, you join us. Thank you very much. March 13th is our hybrid lawn and focus group meeting. Anybody from there, Bob, or anybody else wants?
I don't know if Bob's on or Walls, but I'll say a word.
Sure.
So Ralph is gonna do a travel log. I don't remember what your travel log is about.
It's kind of like a video slideshow of our trip to Yellowstone and the Badlands and Colorado National Monument.
Very
It's
cool.
a 8-minute video to music.
Awesome.
awesome.
Rolling Stones?
No.
Oh,
Not the usual photo share.
awesome. Those are usually pretty good, folks. If you're a lawn member or thinking about it, that's the one to go to. March 14th, Zoom Creative Techniques Group.
Yes, Juliet.
Juliet, you have anything? You want to say anything about that one? Nope. You just learn some cool techniques there. On the 15th, macro focus. Matt's with us.
I just said normal photo share. We don't have anything special lined up, so, but we will probably be, I mean, if people want to talk about, if they have any questions, it'll be the time to bring up about the exhibit, any last minute questions or concerns around that. That'll be a point for somebody to join to talk about that.
Okay, when does your exhibit start?
It'll be in April.
April, okay. Great. So if you're an exhibitor for that macro focus group, that's awesome. On the 16th, that's the day before my anniversary, by the way. On the 16th, if my wife's listening, Zoom point and shoot, and that's by. You have anything you want to say about that meeting? Anything special for that meeting, your next meeting coming up?
The point and shoot one, that would be next month, right?
It-
This one I'm doing the portrait group.
That's right, it's a little bit.
Oh, okay, portrait, yeah, it says point and shoot, but portrait, okay, good.
Okay, and the point and shoot.
My mistake.
Anyone who's interested, anyone who is interested in portraits, let me know and I'll put you on the list. If you are shooting with a point and shoot camera or a cell phone and are pleased with the results you're getting, join the point and shoot group. We're going to be doing an exhibit in December of cell phone photographs, so it's pretty, it'll be the second year we've done that, so.
It's gonna be
check us
awesome.
out.
The inaugural one was beautiful. On Sunday, the 19th, 2 days after my anniversary, is the Zoom Coffee and Cameras Hangout with Sarah. I don't know if she's on board. So that is a Zoom coffee. Come in, you dial in, you hang out.
Yes.
It's fun, yeah, it's all on Zoom and the conversation just goes all over the place.
It's my understanding, it's not just photography, it's any
No,
topic
it's
that
anything
comes
you
up.
want.
Yep,
I think
cool.
you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Forget everything I said. Thank you. I confuse very easily.
And then March 22nd is this hybrid meeting for the photo critique meeting. It's a great meeting. I'll tell you that. And Lisa,
Yeah, so that's Jaime and I together. We help run the critique focus group where we critique each other's photographs. And I mean, I think it's really fun and social and exciting. And we get into what makes a good photograph and why your photos aren't working or why they are working. And this month we have a guest speaker coming. Kendall Reeves is coming to rip us all to shreds.
right here in the library, and we may have beers and whiskeys if we need them after that one.
I like it very much.
And after that, on the 23rd, I can't do the math, but several days after my anniversary, is the Circles of Learning meeting. Don't remember who does.
The jazz.
Oh, yeah, but Jack's out today. Mhm. It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah.
I will tell you, if you,
It's photo retouching.
photo retouching, awesome.
Photo retouching and get completely looked at, complete agenda. Basically how retouching.
Awesome. So if there was something we missed or you need detailed information, you can click on the website links here and it'll lead you to the leaders of the groups. You can email them and find out more. That was, Sarah,
Becca, you're with us?
okay. So I've not been to one, but I read the description and anyone in here?
Yeah, it's really great. It's, you know, every month you wake up something and it's nothing, it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. Just think about it. You know, what incident you take it or whatever the case. This is one focus group that's not technical. You can ask a question, but usually just take photos and send them in.
And the last one for March on the 28th is Spuds. And anyone here for? Okay,
That's run by Alan Yates, but Spud street photography, journalism, occupation, sports. Genres, Spud is Juliet's in that as well. Small view.
we're gonna have a combined showing in November, Spuds and the Film Users Group in November. We'll be with those guys. And those are the events for March, except for one pop-up that came up. Shine, are you with us? Maybe not. So Shine is organizing kind of a pop-up visit over to the Tibetan Mongolian Buddhist Culture Center on March 26th. That's Sunday, March 26th at 2 p.m. She's asking, and her email's on the website, she's asking for a head count so that when we talk to the folks there, they know how many to expect. I think there's 3 or 4 of us have already expressed a desire to go to that. So if
If
Let
you
it-
haven't been in that temple, guys, you need to go take some pictures.
It's
beautiful.
gorgeous.
I mean, it's a gorgeous property. Take a picture and you will have the runaround to do whatever you need to do in there, so.
Yep. And then next up, real quick, are the tours that we've taken. I didn't go, I wasn't able to make it, but the Eskenazi tour, I am understanding was amazing. So thank you very much to Becca Cambridge for putting that together for us and all the work that went into that. I've seen the pictures. It looked amazing. So congratulations to her, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Coming up, Streamcliff Herb Farm and Winery in Comiskey, Indiana. That's again Becca, so it's gonna be a good one. Garden of the Gods in Illinois. That's overnighter with Don Waters. Louisville, walking tour through, walking through Old Louisville and the Belle of Louisville Riverboat. And that's another Don Waters one. So the skies you see there will be real. Not, oh, you there? No? Okay. Okay, so new thing we're doing here, and we had a little mix up with the schedule, that's okay. New thing that we're doing here is we're gonna do the monthly meetings in the library. And the reason why the board decided that is already the technology is better here. We have better resources, better technology. The facilities are amazing. And the feedback we've received for the other groups, the landscape and other groups in the hybrid is just better here. So the board took into account what the group thought of it. We got feedback from the club. Looks like we were good. So this is where we'll be from now on. If we grow beyond the size of this room, there's other opportunities inside the facility that we can grow to. So that's kind of the goal. So everyone bring 3 members. And our, sir.
Juliet had something to say.
No, I
Oh.
introduce our speaker.
Yep, and that's it for that. And now Juliet's going to introduce our guest speaker.
Okay, our guest speaker is Rich Jenzarek. He's the photography editor of the Bloomington Herald Times. He describes himself on Instagram as just your friendly neighborhood photographer. But if you've seen his, and you probably have, fantastic, terrific, and often amazing photos of news around Bloomington and Monroe County, and most especially of his specialty, IU athletics, you know, that's the understatement of the year. And we're very lucky to have him because this is such a busy time, thank goodness, for IU athletics. So he has a BA in journalism from IU and was also previously director of photography at the Bedford Times Mail. And his photos have been seen in the Miami Herald, the Charlotte Observer, the Kansas City Star, the Lexington Herald Leader, the Sacramento Bee, the News and Observer, the State, the Wichita Eagle, Long Reads, the Napa Valley Register, and more. So we're really, really lucky and so glad that he was able to find the time to be here. And so thank you very much. We're very lucky to have you, Rich.
Share the screen.
I can't. Do I just hit share screen?
Share
Is that what you want me to do?
Yeah, share screen, and you go to wherever you have your pictures. Phone or something.
I have them on my desktop.
Yep. Click on the desktop.
Okay.
Desktop.
That sounds right. All right. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Rich. As she said, yep, I graduated from IU in the year 2000, and then got hired as the weekend photographer for the Bloomington Herald Times, primarily covering IU men's soccer and IU women's basketball. And then got the opportunity to lead the Bedford newspaper for about 15 years. And I've been back in Bloomington now. This is my 4th year, going on my 5th year. And my primary focus is IU athletics. I cover the men's and women's basketball teams and the men's football team. That's my main focus. So I'm here to guess that mostly talk about sports photography. I've got some points here. I wasn't really sure about the levels of everybody, so I apologize if I don't hit or if it comes off a little bit, maybe not what you're wanting to hear, but this was my best I could do with what I had. Should I stand or should I sit? I'll sit. Just so I can hit this a little easier. So the first thing I want to talk about, and it's probably the most basic thing, and it's probably the most obvious thing, is know the sport and the game that you're going to be covering. I run into a lot of parents and grandparents who are covering their children, but they don't really understand the game that their children are playing. And what I mean by understanding, I mean understanding the rules, understanding who, if you're covering the team, understanding who the players are, who the important players are. For example, knowing who Trace Jackson Davis is on IU basketball, know who the top performers are on the team, and knowing their handedness. That's the one I think that slips by a lot of people. Understanding that if your best player is left-handed, where you should position yourself around the field or arena or court to give yourself the best opportunity to capitalize on what they're going to do. Trace, of course, is a left-handed player. He presents a different challenge than right-handed players because most people are traditionally, more people tend to be right-handed. So that tends to be what people think of in their mind. And I think a lot of people don't think about the handedness of their players. For example, at IU football, I think that's smaller. Can I make that smaller? Oh, you guys can see it. That's all that matters. We had a quarterback by the name of Michael Penix at IU football, who was a left-handed quarterback. That creates a unique challenge when covering football, is having a guy who throws left-handed. So in the most recent years, I've covered primarily left-handed players, which is different than what you would traditionally think of. And so I think that's something that often slips through people's minds, and they don't. So understanding that before you begin shooting, before you even get to the arena or the field, understanding where you would like to be ideally in order to cover either your kid or the team or whoever the best players are on that team or whoever is most likely to provide the most interesting pitches for that evening. The next thing I was going to is understand the opponent's play. The opponents can often have excellent players. If you're covering a game or an event and not just your specific child, grandchild, or team, sometimes you get the opportunities to cover amazing athletes that are visiting.
It's the guy who
Did the stuff.
well, he's the photographer, the guy with the cap.
So somebody has not muted their mic in the Zoom group. If you could all mute your mics, that would make this work a little better, please.
And could we get full screen?
Everybody looks like muted. All right, we're good now.
Can you make the image full screen?
Trying to conserve battery because I feel terrible if I ran out of battery. I can do this. Does that help? Yeah. That helps. See if I can still move. Yeah, okay, I can still move through. Okay, so this young lady here is by the name of Rin Howard. She played for Kentucky last year. She currently just won the Rookie of the Year in the WNBA. I was fortunate enough to cover Rin when she came to play at IU in the NCAA women's tournament last year. This is where Kentucky had to play. So I studied her and I understood who she was before she got here. And I knew I was going to have a chance to make a very nice picture of her. And I wanted to make a very nice picture of her more specifically because I knew she would be the focus of Kentucky's coverage, win or lose. Kentucky happened to lose that game. So that was literally this was literally the last game she ever played in her collegiate career. So it ended up being a much more important picture that I knew of going into the game, but I had to be prepared for that before I got there. I had to understand that there was a chance This was gonna be the last time she ever played college basketball. This was gonna be the chance, the last time she ever was going to be in a Kentucky uniform. And it just happened to work out, I guess, not to her benefit, but to my benefit. I'm not a Kentucky fan, so I guess it was my benefit too. And so I ended up making a really nice picture, and the Louisville paper and the Lexington paper both use this image quite a bit. And Sports Illustrated actually ended up using it as their player profile piece when they ended up previewing her for the WNBA draft. So that was kind of cool for me personally. And, you know, everybody loves the hair flying. You know, that's something that people end up really enjoying about this picture, and her relative determined face on there. And so the next thing I wanted to talk about was when I talk about the rules of the game, I mean, what is important in terms of statistical achievements for players when they're getting ready to, when they're entering a game, knowing that 300 yards for a passer is a big deal, knowing that 100 yards for a rusher in football is a big deal, home runs are a big deal, and triple doubles are a big deal. This was right after Trace Jackson Davis got his first triple double for Indiana University. So during the game, I was paying attention to his stat line and understanding as he was approaching that there was a good chance that he was going to get a triple double. So I wanted to pay attention to whether it was a rebound or a block shot or a point that he scored that got him to the triple double line, because I knew there would be a celebration around that moment. So if you know that moment's coming, you can prepare yourself for when that happens and be much more likely and be ready to get a picture that will capture that emotion, capture the, you know, that's Xavier Johnson and Tamar Bates congratulating Trace on finally getting his first ever triple double for Indiana. You know, and if you've watched IU basketball, Trace is pretty stoic on the court unless he's being aggressively happy. It's rare for him to be jovial. He's a very serious person, and that's awesome. He takes what he does very seriously and obviously is very good at it. But I happened to get a moment there where he was acting more like a child playing a game, which these are still, I mean, I understand they're adults, but they're still playing a game that they love, and there's a passion involved there. And when they do something that's kind of unusual and their friends congratulate them, you can get a chance at a moment that you normally wouldn't see. And so for me to be able to capture Trace on his big day, knowing that was going to happen, being in position, understanding where he most likely was going to be because he was left-handed, where he tends to be on the floor, I was able to put myself in position to capture that event. And so it's the same thing with, you know, if you're covering your child or grandchild or friend or whomever, you know, maybe them scoring at all is the big deal. There's nothing wrong with that, but understanding what the important statistical achievements could potentially be for the people you're covering can give you a huge advantage if you understand that before you enter the game or before the game starts. There's also in the day and age of rivalries, and there can be friendly rivalries, there can be aggressive rivalries. You guys may not recognize that person on the right. His name is Joey Brunk. The year before this, he played for Indiana University, and then he transferred to Ohio State. I knew for a fact that when Joey came back to play against IU, that there was going to be a chance to have a really good moment between Joey interacting or talking trash, for no lack of a better term, with IU players when it happened. So this was right after Trace dunked, and he's, you know, he's given a little flex, and Joey's not so happy about it. But I knew that there was a chance to capture something that normally doesn't happen. And this picture ended up being, you know, kind of a relatively big deal because Joey and Trace didn't get very close to each other very often because Joey didn't play that very much that game. But I got a chance to capture the former IU player with the current IU star in a moment of relatively high competitiveness. So that's what I was trying to do there. Sorry about this. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was understanding your focus modes. I assume most people understand that if you're shooting sport, continuous focus is where you want to be. So your camera is constantly focusing. You don't want to do single shot focusing. And if if you're on continuous focus, you have a much better chance in a series to get a moment that's a little more special than if you're trying to single shot things. I'm shocked at the number of people that try to single shot sports. I don't necessarily understand why they do it, and that's fine that they do. Also understanding depth of field. I knew for a fact, this happened to be a chance that I knew I was going to have to capture a wide receiver catching a pass, with me being in position of him facing me and the ball coming towards him. I don't want that ball in focus. I want that ball to be understood that it's a football, but I don't want it to be so sharp that it detracts from his face. I'm a real face focused person, and I really wanted his eyes and his face and his expression to pop. So that was my whole goal with this image. And when I shoot this in general, was to make sure you give yourself a chance. If you're thinking about these things before you enter the game, like if you're going to get to shoot, this was that wide receiver drill for IU football. If you understand that that's what's going to be happening repeatedly, and you can get yourself in that perfect position so that you can line it up perfectly and get that image. I'm sure, like, if most of you are coming here, children or grandchildren or friends or whomever, you can go to practices. Most coaches don't have a problem with that. Most leagues don't have a problem with that. And you can give your chance to get yourself an image that you normally wouldn't be able to get in a game. So take advantage. Not every image has to be made at a competition. You can make great images outside of competitions. This was, like I said, this was IU spring practice this year. And it ended up turning out to be a relatively dynamic image of one of arguably our most important wide receivers of the year. However,
So were you on the field when you shot that?
no, IU is extremely strict with their photographers. Not with their photographers, they're extremely strict with media photographers. They give us a very limited location to shoot. However, I had been doing this for 4 years, so I understood where I was. I mean, it's the same spot every year. So I understood exactly where I was going to be allowed to be. And having seen the drills happen before, I knew that the wide receiver drill happened in a certain place. So as I saw the wide receivers start to gather together, that's when I got myself in position, knowing that more than likely what was coming was a catching drill. And I was going to get myself in a perfect spot to capture that picture which is the one I've always wanted to get. DJ Matthews is one of my favorite players. I think he's just jovial, and he loves the game. And so I love players who love what they do. But at the same time, he's very determined to be very good. And so I wanted to make sure there was all the receivers went through the line, but he was the one I wanted to get the special image of, because I knew he was going to be a focus going into the season and throughout the season. However, sometimes depth of field is good. And you have to understand whether you want it or don't want it. This is obviously little 500, which I'm sure we all, we didn't know what little 500 is. I was put in charge of getting the picture as the winning team crossed the line. So I understood I had all race to figure out where I wanted to be. The stands are packed, so I waited till I found my spot. I knew I wanted to be 5 rows up on the 3rd stand from the left of the Bill Armstrong Stadium, because I knew they were going to have to come around that corner. And I knew that, when they always win, they always tend to do this, but I didn't know his teammate was going to jump up like that. And then the other was going to be pumping his fist. And the other two, the yellow jersey and I guess that's the teal jersey to his right, that was 2nd and 3rd. So it ended up being a very close race. So I knew there was going to be a reaction, but I wanted them all in focus. But I didn't want the crowd that's even farther back too much in focus, because I wanted to be slightly blurred. I wanted to be able to tell there's a crowd there, but not be in a focus crowd. And I wanted to be able to read the sign, so everybody knew it was little 500 that's outside of Bloomington. This is more just talking about depth of field, understanding whether or not you want that crowd in focus or not. Cheerleaders are anybody else around the event is a big deal. So you can also make very nice images if you get lighting opportunities. This happened to be during when they introduced the players, they turned all the lights out in Assembly Hall, but the cheerleaders are always doing their thing. So I knew there was some cool light, different light than you usually see in Assembly Hall. So I wanted to take advantage of that and be able to focus on the cheerleader Okay.
Just seeing if I can get a little more of the screen here and
You had it for a second.
even if I can get that off of there. That's just a little bit.
So I wanted the focus to be on the cheerleader and for you to be able to, I wanted her to pop away, but I also want people to understand that was a really big game, a really big crowd. So that was the idea here. So same thing here. I don't want to take away from the action, but I also want to make sure people understand that this is a big event, a large event. So that's Mr. Camper there catching a touchdown pass for IU. So I wanted to be able, and as you can tell, football's a little bit tougher than basketball because you don't know which way players are going to face, and the field is so much bigger. So sometimes you have to do the best picture you can based on where you are. No, ideally, I would have been on the other side and had Cam facing me, but I was still able to make a good enough image that it got the point across, that it was still going to be a catch. And, it's obviously, you can tell who it is. I think this is one that some people struggle with, and it has to do more with the idea that people don't always have the access to the best equipment that they want, or the equipment that can provide you with the best images, but understanding the relationship between shutter speed and stopping action, and knowing your environment, knowing your ISO, knowing what you can and can't do and get away with. I know in Assembly Hall exactly what the light is. I know exactly how fast to shoot a basketball player. I shoot all IU basketball at 1,250th of a second. And I know that's going to get the stop motion no matter what those players are doing. I'm going to be able to stop them in the middle of whatever they're doing and create a nice sharp image, which is what everybody's goal should be, unless you're intentionally trying to show motion with blur or trying to do something along those lines. You want to try to, I would argue, you should be willing to sacrifice image quality. And when I say image quality, I mean in terms of potential color, grain, or pixelation, in order to get a very sharp, crisp image. Especially with modern editing software, you can fix so much in terms of color grain and things like that. Post-processing, but if you cannot fix a blurred image, if the athlete's blurred, you cannot go back and fix that. You can fix a lot of other things. This is actually the first picture I ever took of Trace. This was his freshman year winning the dunk contest at March Madness at IU. Obviously, Assembly Hall is very well lit, so that was not a hard picture to make. I shoot 4,000 ISO inside Assembly Hall, which isn't too bad, especially on modern digital cameras. So that wasn't a problem. However, Memorial Stadium at night is a lot more difficult. The light is very uneven. The light is a lot darker. This was Indiana's huge victory over Penn State during the COVID year. And when I say COVID year, I mean the year that no fans were allowed in the stadium. The only people that are allowed in the stadium were family and media. But that was also one of IU football's best years. They had a lot of huge wins. Beating Penn State on a last second dive by Michael Penix was a huge deal, and Walt Filer goes running across the field doing airplane arms. So I knew that was a celebration I wanted. He just happened to do it with Penn State walking off the field. So I had that nice contrast between the opposing team and our team. But not everybody gets to cover in very nice stadiums like Memorial or Assembly Hall. Most people end up covering, high school. This is the Bloomington North, Bloomington South game. So understanding what the lighting situation was going to be. This was North winning at South for the first time in I don't remember how many years. This was a huge deal. I knew who the star player was. His name was Aaron Seinfeld. He's now tight end for IU. But I knew he was going to be the one to give me the reaction that I wanted, because he's a very emotional player. He's a very excitable player. He's a great kid. But I also knew that if he won at South or North, that he was going to be extremely happy about that. And so I wanted to make sure I got in a position to put him and the score of the game all in the same frame, to give myself a chance to create an image that was representative and could carry an entire page in a newspaper. He actually has this now in his dorm room at IU. So that was kind of cool. Am I boring you guys? So another thing to think about when you go to stadiums, for example, when I shoot for IU, I am putting one, as for basketball specifically, I'm putting one very specific spot. I am not allowed to move from that spot and take photos. However, during the COVID year, I was allowed to move a little bit more because there were no fans. We were allowed to go up in the paper cutouts if we wanted. We were allowed to get up high and shoot with a long lens if we wanted. So understanding at the venue you're at and where you are and are not allowed to go and take photos can give you a huge, huge advantage because you can position yourself to capture your, the people that you are trying to capture, whether it's the team or your kids or grandkids or whomever, friends, doesn't matter. Also, if you have a chance to get up at all, you can create a much cleaner background. It's kind of nice to be able to get up in Assembly Hall. I don't have any worry about any, cameras or other coaches or other players getting in my way. I can have that nice floor covering my entire background and still have the player that I need to focused in the image and create a dynamic image that's a little bit cleaner than it would be if I was down on the ground. Because then you've got the lights at the stadium, you've got scoreboards, you've got various other artifacts that could potentially get in your frame that could distract you from what you're trying to show. Saying now IU women's basketball is kind of like that. This is actually from this year. This is Mackenzie Holmes. The reason I particularly chose this image was I decided to shoot the second half of the IU North Carolina game from up above. And the reason I did that was both to one, potentially give me cleaner backgrounds, but IU women, when they celebrate, they tend to get really close together like that. They tend to huddle and they cheer together. If I'm down on the floor, I would have been blocked by 33 Sydney Parrish. I never would have got Mackenzie's face, which is, in my opinion, arguably the best part of this frame, though Chloe comes in a close second there on the left. But you cannot capture that image if you're down on the ground because the other players are going to be blocking your view. So I knew if I got up a little bit higher, I was going to have a much better chance of catching the reaction because this was a big game for the team. This was early in the season. They wanted to prove that they were, that they weren't just all hype, and as we all know, they're not. And anybody who followed IU women's basketball knew that they weren't, but other people were doubting IU and whether or not they were really worthy of the high ranking that they had got. I also understanding who the players that are going to give you those reactions if you're covering a team. I know Mackenzie's going to give me a reaction almost every game. She is one of the most vibrant, expressive players on the team. The exact opposite of her counterpart, Grace Berger. Grace is one of the most serious players. I mean, she doesn't show emotion very often. When she does, it's wonderful, but you can't count on Grace to give you that every game. You can count on Mackenzie giving you something every single game, whether it's happy, intense, whatever. So knowing that going in, this is very similar situation. This is actually up in Indianapolis during the I don't know, it was Crossroads Classic, Hoosier Classic. I can't remember what the name of it was, but I had an opportunity to get up high and have the IU bench. I knew I could have position myself so the IU bench would be behind the IU players that were playing on the floor. Now this picture didn't come out great by any means, but it came out well enough that I can have them be above the rim. I mean, you can be that high up and still make great images. You don't have to, you don't have to just barely be up. You can get up really high and have a chance to make something that you normally don't get to make. I knew they're all holding up the three because, he's shooting a 3-pointer. So I've got the IU bench there. I've got the IU coach there. I've got the one coach freaking out right behind him. But the whole idea was to get up and give a different, I got to shoot on the floor and up above. And if you have a chance to move throughout the game, you can give yourself more dynamic looks when you're done. I think you will enjoy your images more if you aren't forced to stay in the same spot. You can give yourself different looks. You can use different lenses. You know, I always, whenever I teach high school kids or talk to high school kids, I always talk about WMT, wide, medium, tight. So I always think about that when I'm shooting sports, you know, shoot some things wide, shoot some things medium, shoot some things crazy tight. And I think that the more variety you can bring to your skill set and your images, I think the happier you'll be with your end product when you're finally done. You know, I often hear in baseball and softball, how difficult it is to shoot because of the big field and how distracting all the parts are around the field, whether it be crappy fences, whether it be, you know, fences with advertisements on it. Nothing against anybody who advertises to help out local high school sports, but you don't necessarily want that stuff in your frames. So baseball and softball, you don't have to get up very high. This is just, I'm just standing on some stairs that are leading up to where they do the announcing. You know, I'm not anywhere special. I'm not anywhere where that an average person can't go. But if you can get yourself up and create a nice clean background, you'll give your chance at cleaner images that will bring the focus on the players that you actually care about and want to show. High school basketball, elementary school basketball, junior high school basketball, they'll let you shoot right underneath the basket. You can't do that at IU, but if you're, you know, outside of IU, take advantage of where you're allowed to go. You can, you know, and it doesn't take, if you talk to the athletic director or the coach or the referees and say, hey, can I sit here? 9 times out of 10, they're gonna say yes. There are very few places in a high school gym that they will not let you go. This was back when I was with Bedford, and I'm literally sitting right underneath the goal. And that gives me a view, because the action is gonna come towards the goal in basketball, obviously. It gives you a chance to see the game from a different point of view. And more importantly, show people a point of view that they don't normally get to see. So I would highly suggest to take advantage of those opportunities and put yourself in a position that you maybe not normally would think would be okay. I think a lot of people watch, you know, sports on TV, which would primarily be professional and college level, and you wouldn't have access to these areas. So I think people have trouble thinking about the fact that they are allowed to go there. Like for high school, middle school, elementary school. They'll let you go so many different places that you can't go for college and professional athletics. So take advantage of that. Give yourself different viewpoints. Give yourself different points of interest. This is a perfect example of being wide. The players are going to come to that rim. They're going to be jumping. They're going to be doing things towards the goal. And you're going to have a chance to create a dynamic image that you wouldn't normally see had you just sat back onto the side, on the sideline. If you're covering if you're a parent or just a fan of a game and you're thinking, well, I can shoot everything I want from the stands, you can. But 2 sentences to the coach or athletic director, more likely that athletic director, and they'll let you sit right down on the floor. They don't have a problem with it. They really don't. As long as you understand where you can and can't be, and understand the rules, you can get yourself access to places that you normally wouldn't have access to, and give yourself a chance at an image that, can be kind of special. This is actually Brayton Bailey. If you guys know who Damon Bailey is, that's his son. So this was a chance to create an image that's a little bit different. Okay. So I think I already know at this point is not looking. Okay, so another thing I run into with a lot of young photographers that I mentor, as well as high school kids. I work with the Paoli High School photography department quite a bit. Is don't just shoot action. There are so many more parts of a sporting event than just straight up people running, jumping, shooting, scoring, hitting baseballs, whatever. Don't forget about the bench. The bench can give you some wonderful moments. They're cheering for their own team. They're going to give you emotion. They're going to give you an emotional response to the game that's happening. Maybe the person you're covering doesn't get to play very much, but they're that kid like Xavier here, who's up every time their team scores, and they're going to give you a chance at making a really nice, fun image that can express the moment of the game, and still let you, you can still make images about play. I guess you still make images about the subject that you care about, even if they are not on the floor currently playing. Don't be afraid to use the bench. And, this is a relatively boring picture of Miller Kopp just guarding some guy during the NCAA tournament last year. Indiana, IU men's basketball last year specifically, they really stood up a lot and like to crowd the court. They like to use that as an advantage. They were kind of famous for it. They actually, I wouldn't say they got in trouble for it, but it was mentioned to them a few times, that they like to get right. I mean, they are right up on, this is active play. This isn't during a timeout. This isn't during anything else. This is actively playing. So understand that you can use the bench and people on the bench to create a dynamic image, even if the action on the floor isn't particularly interesting. So I didn't want people to forget about benches. And there's nothing wrong with players looking at you and smiling and having fun. I happened to develop a small relationship with Jordan Geronimo. This was after his huge game in Dayton against Wyoming. I was lucky enough that he looked right over me and gave me this giant smile. And I knew that was going to be a special moment that would earmark that game, because Jordan ended up having a very important game that night, had a big game. I knew he was happy. I was happy for him. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I think he's just a wonderful human being. And so I was so happy for him, and I was so happy he was happy. If it's your child and grandchild, there's nothing, or friend or whomever, there's nothing wrong with them mugging for the camera for you to take a nice picture. You can still make a nice picture out of that. And enjoy it, and enjoy the moment with them. There's nothing wrong with that. Coaches, I think, are one of the most overlooked aspects of sports photography. That's the one thing I have to pound on my freelancers the most, is shooting coaches. I think they're overlooked. They are so integral to the activity that's going on, and I think it's very easy to overlook what they bring. Tom Allen, obviously, is a big deal with IU football. So, and sometimes your coaches are former players, and they might go out and play the game a little bit during practice, during warmups. This was a really cool moment where Mike Woodson grabbed the ball and shot some free throws. I knew how big of a deal that was. I knew that was special to IU basketball fans. People, the younger kids may not know who Mike Woodson is in terms of an IU player. They just know him as the coach. But I knew that him doing that on the floor at Assembly Hall would be something that people would enjoy seeing, would want to see. So I took the chance and, got there. And once again, this is during warm-ups. This isn't during game action. So when you think about covering sporting events, think about all the time around. The classic photographer saying is, go early and stay late. Take advantage of those moments. You just have to, be there. Just all you gotta do is be there. And you've got a chance to capture something that nobody else is going to get. That was kind of a big deal. Understanding how to position yourself so you can create dynamic photos of the coach during the game. One of my favorite things to do, and not all photographers like to do this, I love to get coaches looking at plays with players out of focus in front, like this one. It gives you a chance at a little bit different view. You can frame them between their arms. You can show that how involved the coaches are in the game. That's more than just a static, coach standing on the sideline or pointing or talking to a referee or something along those lines. If you can show their involvement with the game, involvement with their players, how much they are focused on what they are trying to get accomplished with their team on the floor, I think it gives you a chance to create some different images. Not saying by any means that you need to you find your own way of doing that. Mine just happens to be out of focus players with the coach behind looking towards the play. Don't be afraid to show the environment. You can get up high somewhere in a high school gym. You can get up high somewhere in an elementary gym, and you can show the entire arena with a wide angle lens. This is a 24 millimeter lens at the top of Assembly Hall. You can create some dynamic images of the crowd. Those are things that people like to see. I think a lot of people like to have those pictures, later on down the road. It's a really good picture of Assembly Hall, but it can be a really good picture of your elementary school gym, of your playground, of your football field, high school, whatever. You know, if you can take the time, get yourself centered perfectly or as perfectly as possible and create a nice balanced image of the stadium, it's gonna be an image that's worth keeping and that people will be worth remembering. Then also, selfishly for my case, it's a picture I can use over and over again when we talk about crowds at Assembly Hall or we talk about things like that. Timeouts, I think, are often overlooked. You can get some nice moments during timeouts between players and coaches. This is Mackenzie Holmes again during a timeout as Terry Morin is talking to her. So you can get some nice quiet moments of the people that you care about that still show them and show who they are. Don't be afraid to take advantage of timeouts or moments that are normally considered quiet. I'll get to a point later that kind of would reflect back to this. Don't stop paying attention during timeouts, half times, things like that. I think that's a common mistake because there are moments that occur during those time periods that can be very special, can be very unique. It could be something that, you can get that, if that was my daughter, I think that would be an awesome photo to have of her being involved with the team. Crowds, don't be afraid to take pictures of crowds. They're fun. They love what they're doing. And yes, everybody always asks where the tea is. I don't know where the tea is. I don't know where the tea is.
It didn't show up.
But, the main reason I focused on this particular group, if you guys recognize who the S is, that's Anthony Leal, who now plays on the IU's basketball team, but he's also one of the huge supporters of their football team. So I knew that he would be somebody that would be relatively recognizable to people in the Bloomington Herald Times. People knew who he was, that he had already announced that he was going to IU. He was the star of the basketball team. So, crowds are fun. They love it. They can dress up crazy. They can throw purple paint in the air. They can, they can be wild. They're going to cheer at every possible opportunity they can. They're going to yell at the other team. You can get that emotion as well. So don't be afraid to shoot crowds. Crowds can be your family. They can be, your spouse. They can be your children watching whoever you're there to watch. But don't be afraid to show that, those are good opportunities to create images that are different. That can go into a montage or a group of photos that help express, what's going on. If you have a picture of if you have two children, one child cheering on another child, I think that would be very nice to have. If you have, your students cheering for your team, I think that can be a nice thing to show. Face painters are always fun. Young kids, high school kids, college kids, they're wild, they're crazy, they like to do weird things. They like to be noticed. They want to really express themselves. So they make some great pictures. Don't ignore the crowd. Don't get so focused on the action that you forget all the other stuff that's going on around the events. It's an opportunity to take photos and create pictures that can go well. Maybe not as your dominant or lead picture and like maybe a picture montage on the wall or on your website or on your Facebook, but they can definitely help, flesh out the coverage that you're trying to show. And plus they're just fun. I mean, these, the IU student section at IU games they're wild and crazy and, they're, for good, for better or for worse, they are very intense. Let me know if I'm going too long too, by the way. Yeah. And so here's one of the more obvious things, emotion and reaction. I see a lot of shooters when they cover players or young photographers that they're covering when their goal is to shoot the action on the court. As soon as the play is over, they stop paying attention or they get relaxed. Players tend to show the emotion and reaction after the play has happened. This was actually traced after a big dunk against North Carolina this year. It's very easy, and this happened maybe 5-7 seconds after the play was over. It's very easy to be like, okay, now I'm back down at the other end of the floor. That's where they're headed. I'm not paying attention over here anymore. Stay on your subject throughout the entire process. Don't give up just when the play is over, because that is when you're going to get the reaction and emotion from those players, especially if it's a positive play. It's very easy to quit on a, I don't know if that's the right word, quit on a play too early and then miss a great reaction or emotion shot. This is Ali Patberg after getting fouled on a 3-pointer. She kind of tumbled to the ground, she sat there for a second, and then she put the 3 up. And so if you didn't stay with the subject of the thing, it's very easy to miss those moments. It's very easy to not capture those. Coaches are another one that are going to react. Tom Allen in particular. Knowing your coaches obviously helps, but Tom Allen in particular gets very emotional on the sidelines. It's one of my favorite things about him. He is arguably IU football's biggest fan, besides being their coach. So when they have a good play, I know I can look at Tom, stay with him, and he is going to, like, for example, if I'm out of position for the actual play, I know that I can go to Tom and he can show me what just happened in a frame, and I can make it and get the point across just as easily that way as I can having the actual play that happened. Opposing players, not always, if you're covering an event and you don't have a specific care, don't forget that the quote unquote opposing team, maybe not the team that you're there to cover, if the opposing team is winning, they're going to give you an opportunity to create fun images as well. This is Hunter Dickinson last year when Michigan came to IU and won. The crowd had been giving him a hard time all game. And he kind of, as they kind of had taken a run, as you can see, they had taken a 14-point lead relatively late in the second half. He kind of let the crowd know how he felt about that. So there is a chance to create images with the opposing team, especially if they are, winning or losing, getting the opposing team sad because your team's winning is good too. I just don't forget about the opposing team. It's very easy to do, to get hyper-focused on. I myself can be guilty of that. I cover IU. I don't care so much about the other team. I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older. I'm almost 50 now. So I've gotten better at capturing moments and trying to think about the game and how it matters. I'm going to need photos for the Herald Times if IU loses just as well as they win, even though I always want them to win and always expect them to win. I also understand that can't happen every time. So having images that can show you that. And I think we already talked about benches and reaction. This should have been up earlier, sorry. It's my favorite player, Jordan, there again. Understanding, don't be afraid to look to those benches for those reaction shots to give you the emotion. If your players are very stoic, if the people you care about are very stoic, don't be afraid to look to the bench to give you the emotion of the game that can carry, a package or a whatever. They can do that just as easily as anybody else. Very easy to forget. Okay, so number 7, you'll notice I don't have a folder for number 7 because this is something that I don't really have pictures for. Do people here know what chimping is? Is that a term that you guys are familiar with? Okay. And okay, so chimping is what is called reviewing images right after you take them.
Yes.
I can't stress this enough. Do not chimp unless you are under deadline pressure. This is a classic do as I say, not as I do thing, because I often hear people see that, oh, I saw you on TV looking at your pictures during the timeout or during a free throw or during this, that, and the other. The reality is I have to turn in pictures at halftime, so I have to self-edit during the game. I'm required to turn in 10 photos at halftime for an IU basketball game. I've got 20 minutes to go make that happen. So the more I can narrow that down on the court, the quicker I can get that done during halftime and miss as little as possible in the second half. But I cannot stress, unless you are under deadline pressure, there is no reason to try to mentally switch gears constantly during a game. If you can stay involved in the game, stay involved in what you're trying to cover and the people that you care about, you can't change a shot you've already taken. It's already in there. There's nothing you can do, but what you can do is miss a shot that would have happened had you been paying attention. So it's commonly called chimping. Please, 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 unless you have a deadline pressure, do not chimp during a game. There is no reason to do it. It doesn't, I understand the temptation, I really do. You know, when a big play happens during the second half of an IU game, I'm dying to look. Did I get Tracy focused? Did I get that? It doesn't matter. Either I did or I didn't. Me taking the time mentally to switch to, okay, did I get this and look through that, takes me out of thinking about the game and things that potentially could be occurring in the next play. That's what you should be thinking about. What's my next opportunity to make an image that I'll care about? Not did I get the image already? You can check that when you get home and take a look. And if you got it, great. If you didn't, there was nothing you could have done about it by chimping and looking at your photos. That's one of the big things I wanted to stress, was do not chimp unless you're under deadline pressure. Most people, 90% of sports shooters are under deadline pressure. So it's a very bad habit to develop. It's a very easy one to develop. And I absolutely 100% understand the temptation to want to look to see if you got the photo or not. But it provides no advantages and nothing but disadvantages to you if you do it. You're mentally switching gears. You're asking your brain to do a lot. And you could also potentially miss something or not understand, you know, maybe a new player comes in that you care about. Maybe, you know, maybe a coach is screaming at a referee, or maybe something along those lines is happening that you'll miss because you're too busy looking at your back, looking through. Oh, yeah, I got that one focused. You got that one focused, or you didn't. It doesn't. It's over. That, you know, think forward, don't think backwards. There's no advantage to thinking about what you may, what you might have missed. That doesn't mean that after the game, you can't go back and look at your image and say, okay, when this type of play happens, maybe I should have moved here. Maybe I should have thought about this. But that's something you need to do after the game when you're reviewing your images, not during the game, not during timeouts or free throws or whatever. Just don't chip. Don't be a chump, don't chip. So this is one I assume you guys probably talk about a lot here. Everybody needs an editor. And I don't mean that as like you need somebody to be over you, but everybody needs, I mean, you guys have them right, I mean, you're right here. You guys have already taken this step. And I assume you guys do this a lot. Having other people's points of view and opinions about your work you're doing, if you can do that in a constructive, non-demoralizing way, is so beneficial. This was a team of photographers I worked with covering when the NCAA tournament was all in Indiana during the COVID year. And we all worked together, you know, that's me on the left. That's an Evansville photographer there in the black shirt. In the middle is actually a guy who shoots for Getty Images, who in my opinion are the best sports shooters in the country, arguably the world. Having a chance to talk to those people and listening to what they say about your work in a constructive way is so beneficial. It's so easy to get in your own head and, you know, think, well, or be afraid to show people your work because you don't want the criticism. I get that. I don't like when people talk bad about my photos. You know, everybody needs somebody to talk to that can help you along. And you guys have created that already. I just want to, you know, take advantage of that. If you only work with person A, well, try to find a person B, C, and D. You know, even if you only talk to them once or twice a year, or once or twice an assignment, or you know, every fourth or fifth assignment, there's such a huge advantage to having other. It doesn't mean you have to take it, but there's nothing. It's so helpful to hear. Oh, this is what I really liked about this. I don't really like that, and it's okay if you disagree. But it helps. It'll help round out your perspective. It'll help round out your images. It'll give you more opportunities to create images that are different. And that are more appealing to a mass audience, or to even if that mass audience is your family. You know, if your spouse is like, well, I really like when he does this or she does that, you know, there's nothing wrong with hearing that. This was my old, this is more just this is Pat Bean. He was the sports editor at the Herald Times for many years, and that's him working on some pages. So it's just another editor photo. But yeah, everybody needs an editor, a friend, somebody they can talk to, that they can go over the work, because there can be a personal bias to the way you're shooting. You can get, you know, having lived the event or experiencing whatever you're shooting you can make assumptions about what the picture says that people who weren't at the event won't. I can say, this dunk shot was very important. Well, to me, it's just another, my friend could say, well, to me, it's just another dunk shot. I don't understand why it's important. You didn't give me enough context around it. I don't have an understanding why that pass is important. Oh, I'm like, oh, well, I know why, because I was there, and of course that's an important pass, and of course that's an important, ball grab with Trace Jackson Davis. But if if somebody else cannot understand why that's important, then you can take that into account when you're shooting next time. Like, oh, okay, I do need to give more context. I do need to help people understand, or my family, or my Facebook followers, Instagram followers, or however you display your images. Take advantage of that. You guys have that here. I've heard nothing but wonderful things about this group of people. So take advantage of everybody. Don't just choose somebody who always likes your images and they always think you're great. If you can find somebody who's maybe not mean, but a little more critical of your images, grab onto that person, and hold on to them, use that to your advantage, because it's only going to make you better as long as that relationship is constructive. If they're, you don't want destructive people. Nobody wants that in their life. So take advantage of that. All right. So this is my last point. Be your own kind of weird. There's nothing wrong with being you. It's very easy. Early in my career, I had a real bad habit of copying photographers that I worked with early in my career. There was a guy named Chris Howe and a guy named Jeremy Hogan, who were kind of my mentors at the Herald Times when I first started. I spent a lot of time trying to emulate their pictures. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when you're just getting started or shooting something you've never shot before. There's nothing wrong with looking like, oh, I'd like to try to make that picture too. I want to try to do that. But as you get more comfortable doing it, there's nothing wrong with trying to be your own kind of weird and taking photos that you think are neat, but maybe nobody else does. That's okay. As long as you love it, that's all that really matters in the end. I've gotten, I've kind of become known for my multiple exposures at the Herald Times. Not many other photographers have ever done that. I think they're fun. It's okay if somebody else doesn't. It doesn't bother me. So I don't want you to be specifically after the editor, having an editor comment. I don't want people to be afraid to be their own weird. Whatever your own weird is, be different however you want to be different. I love the fact that I'm covering people playing a game, even though they're doing it professionally. Coach Woodson, I have no idea, he's a very, Trace is, I'm old. To me, Trace is still a kid. I understand he's probably 22, 23, whatever. He's a grown man. He's going to be in the NBA next year, and that's all awesome. But he's still a kid at heart, and he's still playing a game. He and Mike Woodson have a very special relationship. You could tell it from the first day they met. So this was during the team photo this year. Him and Mike Woodson kind of fought for the ball. And I knew they were they were having a fun moment. I paid attention to it. I knew that was one of the few times that Trace and Mike, because it was media day, so they're kind of all separated. I knew this was one of the few times those two were actually going to be together. I knew there was a good chance that they were going to have some fun with each other. It was media day. There was no pressure of a game. There's nothing like that. And so when they get ready to sit down for the team photo, of course, Mike grabs the ball and sits down, and Trace grabs it from him, and Mike grabs it back, and Trace kind of gives him an elbow, kind of show that's his team. They're kind of play fighting over who is in charge. We all know that Mike's in charge, Coach Woodson. But Trace had fun with it, and Mike had fun with it right back. Mike's got a smile on. Have fun with those. And this is, once again, don't forget that they're still kids. This is a huge deal. It's as big as, and as big as important as Trace is going to be in his career. He's still just a young man experiencing things for the first time. This is the first time they had ever brought the media floor, the podium out on the floor. And so as he walks up to the podium, he's getting ready to talk. They had a video montage going on. They've got these giant IU banners, and he's, just like we would if it was up on us on the screen. He's looking up the screen himself like, hey, that's kind of cool, he's and I don't know what you guys know about Trace, but he's just a wonderful human being. But there are moments that you can capture that are not action specific. Don't forget that these players, whether they're elementary, college, high school, professional, they're still having fun. They're playing a game. And there's a joy to that. Trace dancing after a big basket, you know, he did a little dance, like, if you could find, you especially will find this if you're fortunate enough to shoot young kids, whether it be Little League, soccer, or, you know, Little League baseball, anything like that. They're going to dance and play with each other and have fun. And those are very special moments that long-term are gonna mean so much more to you and to your audience than another Trace dunk shot. I can get a Trace dunk shot almost every game. I can't get him dancing in mid-floor doing jazz fingers or whatever every game. That was that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. He never did that again. But this was also plays into sticking with the player after the play. This is actually after Race Thompson, I believe it was Race. Can't remember who scored. It wasn't Trace. Trace is the one who scored the basket here. But this kind of gave IU a commanding lead in the game, and it was a good chance that they were going to win. And he was obviously very happy about it. I don't know who that was, but anyway, understanding who that is and understanding that these people are they're playing a game. It's serious, but especially at the college and professional level, but it's still fun. You know, when people play games, it's fun. And so I think my last image here, it's one of my favorite images I've ever taken. You know, this was after the women had secured the Big Ten title. I love Grace Berger. I think she's a wonderful player, but Max, my go-to. Grace is just, she's more reserved. Max is gonna give you something fun. She's gonna do something weird. She's gonna do something wild. You know, and so I knew when she got a chance to get a hold of that trophy, I knew she was gonna be pissing. I knew it was gonna happen. So I got myself in position. And as you can tell, I'm focused on the trophy, not Mac. Because what I wanted was that reflection of Mac in the trophy. Because I thought that was gonna be, she's gonna have fun with it. She's nice, you know, she's not going to be, like, that's not going to bother her that I took that photo. Because you don't want to offend people. But I knew it was an opportunity that I was only gonna get once in my life. You know, the women hadn't won a Big Ten championship, I think close to 40 years, if I remember correctly. So I knew this, and this is kind of, you know, you can see, well, I can't point, you can't see. All the other photographers are in the background there, not where I'm at. Because I understood what was going to happen. I knew that Mac was going to give me that chance. And I wanted to get a picture that to me was going to be very special. I knew what handed she was, so I knew she was going to grab that trophy with the right hand. Because she wasn't left-handed, so I knew how she was going to grab that trophy, and I knew she was going to turn and kiss it. And I got lucky enough to create an image that I think is going to be pretty well remembered for the IU women's basketball season this year. So yeah, I think you guys might be tired of me rambling, but that is everything I wanted to talk to you guys about. Is there any questions or anything that people wanted to know?
So just, so first of all, I love your enthusiasm and your passion. Obviously, you enjoy what you're doing.
I love what I do. Yeah.
So you've spoken about a lot of the players as if you have a personal relationship with them. So I'm wondering, do you get to build some personal relationship, or is it just you know their character from watching them on the field?
It depends on the team. I guess in terms of a personal relationship, like I don't have like even my phone, you know, I wouldn't, but over the years, I'm relatively recognizable because I tend to wear the same thing to a lot of the games. Like I tend to wear a specific hat, like I wear an orange San Francisco Giants hat to almost all the IU women's basketball games. I do that, one, because I'm a Giants fan, and two, because that orange sticks out. And I think the players it's gonna help them remember who I am. And once they realize that I'm the local photographer, I think that helps create I don't know if bond's the right word.
Connection.
It helps create a connection so that they know that they can trust me and that they know who I am. Mackenzie in particular has learned who I am. So I don't have it around, but I've got several images of her. I don't know how much you guys know about the IU. That's after they win a game, they go down and they sing the alma mater. And they all put their arms around each other. And so I put myself right in front of Mackenzie. And so they're all kind of serious singing the thing, but then she sees me and goes. And so I've got a picture of her doing that she probably wouldn't have done that had she not saw my orange hat and recognized who I was. And knew that she probably doesn't know my name, but she knows I'm the local HC guy. And so, Yeah, I wouldn't say I developed more of a personal relationship with coaches outside of IU men's basketball. They are very, I don't know if protected is the right word, but it's hard to get close to IU men's basketball players. It's much easier to get closer to, say, the football team or the IU women's basketball team, or back when I covered IU men's soccer. It's much easier to do that. Now, high school level, it's completely different. I don't know if I'm saying I'm friends, but I can interact with those players a lot more. I can go talk to them. I'll tag them on Instagram. They'll send me messages on Instagram. They'll use my photos, with permission, of course. So it's, yeah, I try to develop relationships specifically with coaches, athletic directors, people that I know I'm going to be working with for a long time. So yes and no, I guess is the answer. I mean, I think I try to make sure that I get noticed and that people understand I'm friendly. I try to be happy. I am happy. I love what I do. There was nothing, my dream job at IU was to be photography editor of the Bloomington Herald Times. So there's literally nothing else in this world I'd rather be doing than what I'm doing. So I try to let that show, I guess. Whomever.
How many cameras do you bring and how do you do lens changes with sports? And do you use a pole?
Okay, like it depends on the sport you're talking about. At IU, we'll start with the two primary sports I cover are basketball and football. What I say for football can be applied to soccer and baseball as well. So for basketball, I carry two bodies, 3 lenses. I have a wide, which is a 14 to 24. And then I carry my 70 to 200. And then I have a 300 2.8 that I use my long lens to cover downfield, down court action. So how I personally do lens changes might be different. Now, I am quote unquote under-equipped to most other photographers there. Most other photographers at IU men's basketball have at least 3 bodies. So they've got a body for every lens. I haven't been provided that by the Herald Times. So I can't do that. So when I show up at Assembly Hall, I've got a 300 on one, and I've got my 70-200 on my other camera. And then after I shoot, say 10, 15 minutes of the first half, after I shimp, getting ready for halftime, if I know I've got, like say, a good picture of Trace, which is something I always try to have, a good picture of Race, a picture of Woodson, and I know I've got that, what I call the, well, I better not say that. I know I've got the pictures that can cover my butt if push comes to shove. Then what I'll do is I will take the 70-200 off and put the wide on and shoot my down court action wide with either sometimes I take the 14 to 24, sometimes the 24 to 70, just depending on what I'm feeling. That's just how I feel that day. And then but I've always got the 300 on. The 300 never leaves the body so I can shoot the far away action, the other end of the court. So that one never leaves. So I only change on one body. And I do that obviously at times when it's timeouts, free throws, when I have a second to do that. But yeah, I'm a 2-body shooter. Now football, I do use a monopod. At basketball, I don't, because at IU men's basketball, I am sitting like this, and that is the only place I'm going to get to go. I don't get to go anywhere else. You sit right there. If you try to go anywhere else, they don't like it. Now there are a couple spots you can go up high and shoot at IU, but it's become increasingly difficult due to where they now have forced to put the TV cameras. I'm so tall that I can't really stand in the spot that I need to. And in Assembly Hall in particular, there's this giant glass railing that goes up, I don't know, 3-4 feet. So for me to be able to shoot over that and stand in this guy's way becomes increasing. So they don't really like to do that. So at Assembly Hall, I'm stuck in one spot. So for me, it comes to your comfort level. I'm comfortable holding a 300 for 45 seconds to a minute at a time, and then be able to switch down. I've got a nice little thing in front of me, so I can just set that down, grab the 70-200, and I just go back and forth that way. Now, football is completely different. You're hiking your butt up and down that field constantly. And so I do have a monopod that I carry for my long lens. I use a 400 for IU football on one camera. My other camera is a 70-200 with a 1.7 extender on it. So that kind of covers. So I can kind of cover all that entire range. But once again, I am quote unquote under-equipped compared to most photographers. Almost like the Associated Press, Indianapolis Star, almost all the other major outlets, all their photographers carry 3 bodies. I just don't, they've only provided me 2, so that's all I use. I don't think it hurts me. It can be more tedious because I do have to constantly switch lenses, not constantly. I do have to switch lenses if I want to do that. But I can only shoot, and just like them, you know, we can only shoot 1 camera at a time. So, you know, you can't, they kind of made me good. But you can only shoot 1 camera at a time. So I don't feel like it, I don't feel like it costs me much, other than the fact that I do have to occasionally switch a lens. So at IU football, I've got 400 on a monopod. I've got 70 to 200 on my shoulder, and then I've got a little thing that I wear that has an attachment to it that I can put my other lens that hangs, so it'll hang off of it. So I can switch those lenses without having to fumble around or anything like that. So that's how I primarily do it. Yeah. Same thing with soccer, is the same way I do football.
So where are you sitting on the floor for the in assembly hall?
Technically it's the floor. The way the media seating is at Assembly Hall, there's 4 seats that have little milk crates that we have to sit on. And then there's the next 4 seats that are actually on the hard floor. I am the milk crate closest to the goal. And I'm not actually on the floor. Being as tall as I am, I'm not gonna lie, I hate it. I'd actually rather be on the floor Indian style. But instead, you know, it's about like that. So I'm constantly doing that. And so for me, it's pretty uncomfortable. It's not awful, don't get me wrong, but it's something I have to complain about anyway. But it's a milk crate with a, you know, like a cushion you would put in your seat if you went to a football game. That's what I'm sitting on. Yeah.
Well, why do you have the light? There's so many different lights in assembly hall. How do you have the lighting set on the camera then?
You kind of, since I shoot there so often, it took me a while to develop it, but I know going into Assembly Hall, I know exactly what the temperature is. It's 4100 K. That's what I know that's going to give me the right. Now, Assembly Hall is different colors on each end of the floor. So that's kind of different. One end is a little more magenta than the other end. I've learned that over time, but now I know exactly what it's going to be when I go in there. You know, I shoot, it's 4000 ISO, f4, 1/1250th of a second for on-court action. Now I have to switch, obviously I'm going to the crowd because the crowd's not as well lit as the floor. The floor is written for TV. So anything around the floor, I'm not talking about the bench because that's the TV lights hit those guys. I'm talking like the crowd, like the face painted kids or anything you see up in the crowd. I know what that is. I just drop down to 1/250th and I keep everything else the same and I don't expose that right. So luckily at Assembly Hall, Assembly Hall is very well lit. It's not the best lit gym in the world, but it's extremely well lit and it's extremely even. Both ends of the floor are even. They're just different temperatures. That makes sense to people when I say that?
Yeah.
They're just different temperatures, but the lighting in terms of the exposure is the exact same on both ends. So at Assembly Hall, I don't have to worry about that. Memorial Stadium at night is a nightmare. All football stadiums are. It's not Memorial. This is not a IU problem or a Memorial Stadium problem. It's because those giant spotlights are hot in some spots, cold in others. So in those situations, if it's lit for a national TV game, national TV like CBS or ESPN, they'll bring in extra lights and make it nice and even throughout the whole field. But when it's the Big Ten Network or not such a big game, you have to cheat towards the center of the field because that's where the light is focused. And then on the edges, what I usually, I have my shutter speed set. You guys back, I assume we all back focus shutter, most of us, right? So I have my front dial set to my shutter speed. So I understand that if they go or start running down the sideline, I can immediately just drop that down to 1/800 and expose that there, right? And then go right back to 1/1250th when they go back to the center of the field. So that's just something I've learned over time. I know exactly what it's going to be. Now, when I go to a new gym, like if I'm going to a place to cover, a team that's playing an away game or a tournament game, like when they sent me to Dayton last year to cover the NCAA, I had no idea what that gym's gonna be like. So I made sure I got there early, go early and stay late, and I shot practice. They're gonna be warming up. You can they're not gonna be as fast as they are in game, but you can get an idea of what the temperature reading is gonna be. You can understand that before you actually have to shoot things that you truly care about. So that's another thing I would suggest is if you are sent to a gym or you're going to a place that haven't shot before, you're not comfortable shooting yet, get there early enough, understand what you want your shutter speed to be for the sport that you're covering, For example, on high school basketball, I only have to shoot 1-800 to stop the players. They're not as fast as college players. As talent level goes up, speed level goes up. When I shoot the NFL, it goes to 1/1600 when I've shot the Colts before. And so the whole idea is if you understand this now, there happens to be a player in Bloomington this year named JQ Roberts who does play like a D1 college athlete. So I do tend to shoot him faster. As a general rule, the lower the level of the skill level, the slower shutter speed you can use and still get that complete stop motion.
What did you say your ISO is in Assembly Hall?
4,000.
Well, are you Canon or Nikon shooter?
In my life, my personal gear is Sony. The Herald Times, I started off Canon, now I'm Nikon. So I've shot all three major brands throughout my career. I am currently a Nikon shooter, though most of Gannett as a whole has started to switch to Sony. So that's hit all the big papers like Indy Star, is now all Sony. That will eventually filter down to me. But since Sony's my personal gear, that doesn't scare me. But yeah, I'm personally a Nikon shooter at the Herald Times. My personal gear is Sony.
I got a question.
Sure.
Have you shot, not the sport that you usually cover, like, have you ever done any like physical combat sports, and any advice for people for taking shot for those?
You mean like martial arts? Is that what you're talking about?
Kickboxing, stuff like that?
I have shot judo a lot, and I guess to some extent, I've also covered a lot of wrestling, which may not be exactly what you're talking about, but that is a physical combat sport.
Yeah.
That wrestling is a very unique and difficult sport to cover, in my opinion, because people are, they're just constantly on each other. And grappling on the ground, and, it's just a really, I think people who can take really good wrestling pictures deserve all the credit in the world. That's an extremely difficult sport to cover. But in terms of covering, like, I've covered a lot of martial arts competitions down in Bedford, at a studio there that specializes in judo, and they have some MMA stuff there. So are you asking, and you're wanting to know like how to cover that differently?
Yeah, especially when they're in like a cage.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, to me, that would be, I guess I would compare it to okay. I assume your concern is that the cage gets in your frame and can you not get close enough? Is that your concern?
Because, they seem to cover, like, a lot of position of like the team and the coach, they'll let you get very close. There's
Okay.
a lot of spots.
So if you're not allowed to get very close, there are going to be some severe limitations to that. The only thing you can really do is try to get the lowest f-stop you can to try to blur those things out as much as possible. When I covered, like, I don't know if you remember the softball shot that you saw there, that was through a fence.
Okay.
But luckily the fence is far enough away. So what you gotta try to hope for when you're covering judo or sports like that, where they're in a cage, you want to try to shoot them as far away from the obstruction as you can with a very low f-stop. Try to blur that out of focus and not make that part of your image. If you're not allowed to get in there and put your lens right up on it, that's really the only option you're going to have, just due to the physical limitations of the cage. Another thing you might consider is trying to use try to think about the cage as an advantage in terms of framing your shots. It's going to give you some nice lines potentially, but I don't know how wide the bars are on the cage you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I don't really have any solution to that other than you want to drop your f-stop as much as possible so that you can, even if there are a bunch of bars that you're having to shoot through, that your focus brings your viewer right to where you want them to look, so they don't get distracted by the bars or whatever.
So because there isn't like a position that everyone gravitate to, like how in basketball, the hoops, people will circle around and fight.
Exactly.
So it's unlikely that you ever get a good face shot.
Correct. And to me, that would be very similar to wrestling, because in wrestling, it's a 360-degree field, and those guys are going to go who knows which way, depending on how the match goes. So the only thing I would suggest is, I assume what would be most beneficial would be knowing the athletes that are getting ready to perform. What do they like to do? Do they like to punch or kick with their left or right hand? Do they tend to come in this way? Do they always tend to like fake left and go right? If you learn the people, I think that would be the most advantageous thing you could do, is to learn the athletes you're going to cover and know what their tendencies are and try to play to that. If this guy likes to circle to the right, when he gets if he gets himself in trouble, he's going to circle to the right and then he's going to do his thing. I think that's really the only thing you could do to try to, you can't be everywhere at once. So, just like that football shot, I wasn't in the right spot for Camp Camper. But you can also make pictures from behind. You don't always have to have face. I love face shots, but so I guess I would try to think about ways of shooting it that are interesting, that don't have faces, whether it be shapes, things like that.
Is there anyone in the Zoom world that has questions?
Should I stop sharing my screen or anything?
Rich, I'm Dorothy Ann. I was wondering, do any of the people that are used to seeing you shoot, do they ever ask you for photos?
Oh yeah, yeah. By far, the most common person to ask me for photos is the parent of the athlete. I get those requests the most at the Herald Times. Unfortunately, because when I'm shooting for the Herald Times, I don't own those images.
Right.
Gannett owns those things. So now there are rules in terms of what what we at the Herald Times do, because our current way we sell images is down, and has been unfortunately for quite a long time. What I am able to do for most people, most parents, is I can put a watermark on the image and then send them I wouldn't call it low resolution, but a medium resolution file so that they can have a copy of it. But yeah, I get asked very, very frequently. One of my favorite things is when I tag athletes on Instagram and then they put it in their story. Mackenzie's very good about that. She always gives me credit. I'd like to point that out. People aren't. But yeah, I get asked for images pretty often. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be one of those parents.
Sure. No, and I get it. And it breaks my heart that the system doesn't, since we've been bought out by Gay House Gannett, that the system's been broken. They promised me that a new system's coming, and I can't wait till it comes, because it really breaks. Here's one thing I will say to people who want to buy images from any publication: don't wait to ask for those images. I am extremely saddened and disappointed when people say, "Oh, hey, my kid played for Bloomington South in 2004, and we really like this picture that ran in the newspaper." That's so, depending on how the filing system works, that can be almost an impossible get, and it breaks my heart when hey, we're wanting to do this for, his grandfather for Christmas or whatnot, and I have to tell him I don't have access to it. The image has been lost, the negative no longer exists, whatever the case may be. So what I will say is, if an image appears of one of your children in the newspaper, ask sooner rather than later, or any publication, because depending on the archiving system of the publication, those can disappear really, really quickly.
Thank you.
How many images do you capture on an average basketball game, IU basketball game? How many images do you walk away with?
Do I actually save or do I physically shoot?
Yeah, physically shoot.
Okay, physically shoot, I would say 400 to 500 a half.
I have.
Yeah, so 800 to 1,000 a game.
Okay.
But I'm motoring at 12 frames a second.
How many do you keep? What's the shooting ratio?
What I try to make a gallery that's between 35 and 50 images for every single football and basketball game. But I obviously save more than that. I probably save 70 or 80 a game. So maybe 10% if I'm lucky.
So you don't do any post-processing, because you have deadlines?
Well, not only do I have deadlines correct, but also the rules of photojournalism don't allow me to do a lot of post-processing. I'm very limited on what I can and can't do. Now, yeah, crop, I can adjust the exposure, if I need to. I can add a little contrast, maybe a little, and sharpening. That's because I shoot raw. I shoot everything raw, which not a lot of sports shooters do that, but I shoot everything raw to capture the most information I can. So outside of cropping and sharpening and some very minor exposure, I don't do anything else. Now, my personal stuff, absolutely, I'll smack a vignette or something. I'll put some weird colors on it. I'll do all kinds of different things. But for when I'm shooting for the newspaper, I'm very limited on what I'm allowed and not allowed to do due to the rules of photojournalism.
Do you do it in camera?
No, I do it all in, now for the paper, I do it all in Photoshop. My personal gear, I do it all in Lightroom.
Question about interior photography. I've heard that whenever you're in a stadium, like a basketball court, like light flickering can be an issue. Do you have any advice on countering that?
Let's see, I've shot from elementary school gyms all the way up to Assembly Hall and at where the Pacers play. I've never ran into that issue anymore. Modern lights don't have that problem, especially the LED ones. You don't have to worry about matching your ISO or about you shooting so fast that you get with the shutter in your images. So no, that's not so much an issue anymore as it used to be. If you do run into that problem, then the only solution, unfortunately, is you have to slow your shutter so that you're capturing a full cycle of light. So no, I don't run. What I do run into is there are a couple people who have access to strobes in Assembly Hall, so they can strobe into my shots. That's the only thing I personally have to worry about. In terms of combating that, it really, like at the North Gym, South Gym, Lighthouse Christian Academy, couple of elementary schools, and I haven't run into that because modern lights recycle so fast that even at 1,000th of a second, I've never run into the shutter look. I assume you're talking about that shuttering look on your frame. I don't run, I used to run into that a lot more, but I don't run into that. I haven't run into that in probably over 10 years.
Awesome.
Got time for a couple more questions.
Yeah, there is one question came online in here. I was wondering if there was specific reason Assembly Hall has a color temperature change from one end to the other, or that is just coincidence, accident of the lighting?
I personally don't know what the reason is. I just know that it exists and I adjust to it. I think what it is that, you know, when they put all the new lights in, they, you know, some of them have just aged differently than the other ones because it's been up there 4 or 5 years now.
It's
So I
those
just-
championship banners on one.
I would like to, and Assembly Hall specifically, what actually bothers people, now that I've learned that the color change and what they are at each end of the floor, what really can affect my shots, and I have to be careful about, are those advertising boards that line Assembly Hall floor. Because they can switch to blue, they can switch to green, they can switch to all of these different colors that throw light into your frame that you're not expecting. That's actually what I am much more concerned about than the temperature change at the two ends of the floor. And it's very minor. It's 4,100 at one end and 3,950 at the other. So for most people, that wouldn't make much of a difference. I'm kind of a stickler, I guess, about that. So I like to try to match my first half and second half frames.
Just a quick comment. On those pictures you had when you were underneath the basket, those compositions were just amazing. It's like the players were just in a perfect position, like 3 guys off the floor and one guy's arm up here. And I'm sure that's you're shooting sequences and stuff here, but I just had to say that that was amazing.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate
Shots
it.
was like that too. So one guy had an arm up like this, was perfectly positioned. You know,
Yeah.
that's where the editing is, right?
Yeah, understanding where and see at high school games, it's different than college games because I don't have the deadline pressure of a high school game. I shoot an entire high school game, I go home, I eat, you know, they're not, you know, Jim Gordillo, who's our sports writer, I know his story's not gonna be done until like 11:30 or 12. Because writers have to write too, and what heck, Jim, man, that guy, hardest working man in media, you know, he does it the old school way. He's gonna stay after, he's gonna talk to coaches, he's gonna talk to players, and then he's gonna go home and write a story. So I know that gives me the space I need to go home and give it a really good edit for high school. Where in Assembly Hall, I shoot for both the Indy Star and the Bloomington Times, and they want those images right now. They want them right now. So it's a different feel. And it's you know, it's all, you know, it's all about being fast for sure when it comes to
But you go also get the peak of the action. Amazing to see the peak of the action.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was a very, and once again, that has something to do with knowing that the team that was coming was a very athletic team. So I knew that they have kind of a rivalry with BNL. I knew that everybody liked to pick on Brayton because he is Damon's son, not pick on him, focus on him, I guess is a better term. They knew he was going to be the focus. Everybody wants to block the shot of an IU legend, you know, of the son of an IU legend, Indiana high school basketball legend. So I knew there was a good chance that that was going to happen. I knew Jeffersonville in particular. There's a history between those two schools, so I knew that was going to be a very aggressive game.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, did you play yourself?
I sat the bench. I went to Anderson High School. So yeah, I played basketball at Anderson for 3 years. And then I also played golf. But when I say I played basketball, I really just played during practice. I didn't actually play.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you guys all very much.
Yeah. Well,
Anytime.
thank you very much. That was, like Zola was saying, your enthusiasm is very infectious, and I think everyone got a lot out of it. I appreciate it a lot. Look at the webpage for future events. If you're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, we have all that stuff, folks.
One thing I was gonna say, if anybody who wants to contact me, you're more than welcome to. I can't promise I'll be the quickest to respond to you, but the easiest way to contact me, I don't know if you guys want to put this somewhere with other people at home can see it. Once again, you don't have to, no pressure. But I'm also happy to talk. I love talking to photographers. I love helping people out when I can. It's R and then my last name, which is JANZAR.
Hang on, or,
Yeah.
Well, we have it and we'll make it available.
Yeah. And
okay,
LT.com.
all right.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean
No, yeah,
that.
so we'll make your website available, and you have Instagram, all that kind of stuff?
Yep, I'm Shutter Speeding on Instagram.
Shutter speeding.
Yep, all one word. So
Awesome.
Shutter Speeding on Instagram. Yep.
Thank you very much, guys.